First, I want to welcome everyone to a series of webinars that we plan to do specifically about process automation. This is probably one of the most asked about and the most questions that our customer have really focus on process automation. So thank you all for taking your time to come and sit and hear me talk about this a little bit. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Raul. I'm probably interacting with a lot of you throughout the course of the time that you're using Goverlan. I'm the VP of support. My job is to make sure that you guys are happy using the software and to help you with your day-to-day tasks. And for those of you who are new, again, you probably will interact with me or one of my members of my team at some point where we can talk about process automation, because everyone eventually will have questions about it. So the first thing I want to do is start off with the housekeeping. Everyone is muted. You do have the ability to throw questions into the Q&A session or into the chat system. I see a lot of you guys are using the chat here, which is great. So that way you can go ahead and ask any questions that you need to, and then we'll take care of them afterwards. So this is being recorded, so we'll be able to send this out in an email later on. You can share it with your team members or for those who weren't able to attend. So let's talk about what we're going to be doing here today. So I want to really focus on the basics of process automation. So this is about how they work, how to put them together, sort of the mentality that you have to have when going into deciding whether you want to use a process automation to accomplish a specific task. So we'll be going into the agenda, something like, what the process automations are. We'll be talking about how they work, what the anatomy of an automation is, and of course, doing some live examples so we can actually see and do and have some feel on this. So again, if you have any questions, put them down at the end, and we'll have a Q&A session. I'll read them off and answer them at that time. So with that, let's get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is talk about what is a process automation. Well, the first thing I like to start with is I define process automations as a framework for remote automation tasks, right? So it's kind of the Legos of Goverlan. You have a series of things you need to do. Some of it involves commands, some of it involves some reporting and things you might want to change. And you kind of take those Legos and you stick them together to make this thing that you need to do, right? Imagine, if you will, you probably don't even have to imagine this. We've all been through this at some point. Your manager comes in and says, I need you to, terminate this employee, then log off all the machines that they've had. He was a security risk. And also I want to report on some things. And you're there like, what, what's going on? And they just have this mystical unicorn of things that they want you to do all in one time, in one day, for instance, right? So those are the little Lego pieces that you're going to put together to make this mystical unicorn of automation that you want for these people, for your managers. They're designed to be lightweight, right? So it's designed so that you look at a process, you translate that into process automation, you run it on some tests, some test machines and test objects, and then you deploy. There's no big servers necessarily needed for this. There's no big architecture needed for this. It is very similar to how you might approach a situation with a script, right? Also, they're useful for solving specific problems. So for that mystical unicorn that your managers came in to have you find and do, you can use an automation sort of in a tactical format, right? That's kind of the word that I want to use here. It means that it is designed for a specific purpose, and you can take that unicorn and now put some cargo pants and boots on it and target a specific thing that you want to get done. Right, so when we think about process automation, it's a framework, it's your Legos to put things together. It is designed to be lightweight so you can target specific things quickly and react to situations quickly. And of course, those things are usually very specific. So you want to target those things in a tactical fashion. What can they do? That's another part of it. Process automations can do two things really well. The first thing is retrieve data, right? So it is designed so that you can get information quickly. We always get compared to, well, you know what, I have SCCM to do that, or I have Config Manager, I have these other tools to do that. We find that Goverlan really comes into play when you have to find a thing fast. I need to run this automation on these 50 machines to find out who has this application installed or where this user is logged in. Some of the bigger products, they're designed for the heavier lifting. Goverlan is very surgical in that manner, where you need to just draw up a report for something quickly. That's what you can do there. But it's also good at making changes. So this is the second thing that you use process automations for, is to change something, right? So you've gone through the process of finding out your information, your reconnaissance, if you will, on a subject. You find out this application is installed here, and you need to then change it, remove it, or you find that someone's AD account, you got a bunch of old ones that you need to pull out. Well, now you can design the automation to make the change for that, right? So those are the two things that it does well, and that's kind of what I want you to keep in the back of your head when you're thinking about, should I use an automation for this? Do I need to find something out? And or do I need to make a change? So now that we kind of understand why you might want to use process automation, let's talk about the pieces of the process automation, the anatomy of an automation, right? So the first thing is, of course, naming and categorization, right? That is super important. A good automation starts with a proper naming standard and classification. I have seen some of my customers' process automation lists, and it's like, it's got one that's like test 1 and test 2, and then don't touch this one because it'll reboot all the machines or something like that. Try to find a time to sit and organize your automations in a way that makes sense to you and possibly someone else if you're going to use them, right? So for instance, categorize them with Active Directory management ones, you know, put them in one category. Maybe some security and compliance, maybe some configuration management stuff or reporting. So that's really, really super helpful when putting together automations. The next part is the target selection. Who is going to receive this automation? Now, process automations allow you to put things together in lots of different ways. You can cut up the pie, if you will, in several different manners, right? You can target a list of users. You can target a list of users and their workstations. You can target just workstations by IP address. When creating a scope module, which is your target selection, you want to put things together in a manner that might be important to the business, such as a functional group or maybe a departments and so on. And you can create those so that you can use them easy later on, right? It's just a simple drag and drop system once you have that. And the third part of a process automation is the action selection. This is the part that does all the actual work, right? So the action selection is when you're going to decide how you want to go about solving a specific problem or how you want to go about retrieving certain information. The key here is to be specific with the actual modules that you put in there in the order that they run. Try not to dump too many things in one specific module of automation, right? Because later on, when you have to troubleshoot them, it becomes a little difficult to actually get to any of those and to figure out which ones you might need to pull out. So what you do is you put them into discrete chunks of things to do, right? So step 1 could be, you know, manage some things about an Active Directory account. Step 2 could be, you know, something about the AD account and then the machine that they're logged into to do something. So that way, in the event that you need to troubleshoot it, you can pull one out and see if that works or put in some others and troubleshoot it that way. So we have the naming and categorization, which is super important to get started, defining your targets well, and then of course at the end, the action selection, figuring out what it is and what steps and what order things are gonna happen in. Okay, so that being said, let's do a little bit of demonstration, right? Because I hate PowerPoint anyway. So let's do some stuff here. All right. So for anyone who is not familiar, this is the Goverlan Reach console. Of course, this is the automation and reporting section. This is where you're going to go to start to create these process automations. When you first start with Goverlan, it's a blank slate. And it's kind of done that way on purpose because process automations are very specific to your environment. But let's start with a couple of examples, right? And we can look at all those components as we kind of go through. So the first one I'm going to do is, let's do a simple report. This here, we can look at each piece as we go along. All right, so let's see here. So the first one we're going to do is a very simple report. We're going to report on if a specific product exists somewhere, right? So report, let's do find Chrome remote desktop. This one I got recently from a customer. They found out that someone has installed Chrome remote desktop, which also means that the user may have had admin rights, bad, and then was able to access their system from home, which is against company policy. So here's a very specific example. We're going to say locate any systems, remote desktop. So this is just so that someone coming after the fact, if you share this with them, they kind of have an idea of what's going on. And of course, we want to categorize it, right? So we just add a category here. This one is probably along the reporting, right? You can say software reporting, something like that. All right, so now we've added a category and we have that naming. Now we can choose our targets. And this is sort of what I was getting to, defining them in a way that is functional, right? So you might have a series of companies that you support. So you might want to list things out by company. You may have systems in a specific site that you want to categorize, right? So when you double click add new here, it's going to give you the ability to sort of go through those categories. Here you can target something by OU. You can, of course, target something by IP range. This is another very popular one. One that I suggest that a lot of customers use is the VPN IP range, because if they're on the VPN, there's a good chance that you might be able to get them. So let's do VPN IP range, right? And we'll say all those systems and this are on the VPN. And I'm going to make this a /24. This does support the CIDR format for those of you who use that. Or you can just put a beginning and end and you're good to go, right? So what this one will do, VPN IP range, is target systems that are up in the VPN. Now, that's one way you can do that, and of course, drag it down here to save it. So that you can target things this way. We can also do one that I have here, which is just, of course, or we'll do one with an AD container. Workstations, right? What I like about IP range and OUs is that they're dynamic. So if systems show up in there, when the automations run against them, they will be targeted. If a system leaves, then it won't be targeted anymore. So those are dynamic containers, which is kind of nice. The next thing we're going to do, of course, is add some sort of action, right? So this is where we're going to define what it is that we want to do. In this case, a very simple one. We're going to say report, and we'll go to software products. Now, this is a big list, and sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming. What you can do here, of course, is search for what you're looking for. Software, right? And it'll kind of truncate the list for you. And we want to know the product name and maybe the install date. If Windows records the install date, it will be there, which is kind of nice. And of course, we can add the condition. Now, this is really where the power of the process automations come in. The conditions are going to allow you to sort of change how you want things to move, right? So you may want to create a condition that says, I want only systems that have a user who's logged in, or I want systems that only have a specific serial number or AD accounts or something like that. So the conditions is really where you get into it. Now, what is important here is that you develop the conditions specific to what you want. My advice to go into this is don't add any conditions at first. Run the report and see what the data comes out like. And then you can say, oh, you know what? Let me copy and paste this. I want to do it equals to, right? So in this case, we'll say software products, product name, and then here we have this system to sort of determine whether or not you want to include something. Here we're going to say begins with, and then I'm going to add Chrome Remote Desktop. Now, in this specific example, this is what it looks like in the programs and features list. All right, so any software that begins with Chrome Remote Desktop in the programs and feature list will be reported by this here. So I'm going to say OK. And then next, this is how you want it to run. You can run it on demand. You can set it on a schedule, have it email you, and so on. We're just going to do a run now for this one here. Generally speaking, report actions, they're pretty safe to run. Click, go get, and that information comes back. Now here, as you can see, we've got two culprits on this list. We've got two machines that have this particular software that we're saying we really don't want that, right? So now we can determine how we want to go about changing this. So what I'm going to do in this one, I'm going to convert this into what's called a find and destroy. So let's do, I'm going to rename this. Where's rename? There you go. Find and destroy, like that, Chrome Remote Desktop. Because we're now going to add an action to it. So we've gotten the intelligence. We know that there are some systems. We know that we have results returned. And now we're going to go to properties and change this just a little bit. So here in the action module, we're going to say add new and execute, right? So the reporting is where you retrieve, but the execute is where you change. Set is just another fancy way to say change, but more for the AD stuff. Execute is what you want to do directly onto the machine. So here we're going to say software products and uninstall software package. Now this here is, I'm sorry, uninstall instance. Uninstall instance is going to remove any instance that matches in the condition, right? So if I go down to software products and just add that same condition where product name begins with Chrome Remote Desktop. Chrome Remote Desktop. Right? So this action is designed to not only show you what machines had it, but also remove it. Now I'm going to say here, remove desktop. Remember to be specific with the naming convention, right? So here's find and here's remove. These actions are going to execute in this order, and you can use the mouse to sort of drag them around. But first it will find, meaning it's going to give you a report of, and then it will do the removal. So now we have that. We're going to hit yes, and now we're going to hit run. Now that happened. Let's hit run here. So for those of you who don't know, if you right click and hit run, you're going to get this summary screen, which is kind of nice. All right, so here we asked for it to give us a report first. So there's the report. And let's see how well it did. So let's go to execution status and history. And let's go to the last run. So it's saying it was successful for each of these here. So this screen will also tell you if a specific module failed and the reason why it failed. So technically, if I run this again, right, it shouldn't return anything. So let's see if the demo gods are going to be nice to me today. But it should have uninstalled. So what we have here is, okay, we have now the execution report. You get this report whenever there's no results to return. This is what you want to see when you have something with a condition. You want to see this window. This means there was no results and we're good to go. So on those systems, we have now removed the software. And if you want, we can even spot check it, right? So what was one of them? Threshold one, sure. Let's go here and to programs, and there is no Chrome Remote Desktop. This is the Chrome browser, but that's it. So this is just a way to, again, look at a specific problem and decide what it is that you want to do with it. So this is just the important aspect of that. So what I also want to show you guys today is the Automation Center, right? So in the Automation Center here, it's basically a collection of very common automations to run. We have here a list of them. All the instructions are here for you. One very common one to run, finding non-compliant local admins. This one is a big one. I'm going to actually add this to the list here, and I'm going to show you how you can take this, which has the instructions and so on, but you can actually hit download automation here. Oops, that's my IE browser, not good. Here, you know what I'll do? I'm going to do it from here. Just in case you wanted to see, you can do /automation, and that's where it will take you. I don't think anybody's using an old IE browser anymore. All right, so we're going to click for details and download. So as you can see here, I can click and it's going to ask me to import it, and it now has been imported. So now I go to my Automation Center, and here it is. Now, when you download anything from the Automation Center, essentially you're going to go to Properties and you're going to go to Scope and change your scope, because this just has a generic one here, right? So let's talk a little bit about this. We're going to remove that because we have one nice that we made already. I think I did. Let's see. Okay, this has them all. Let's just remove that and put just my test workstations in it. Okay, excellent. All right, so I just replaced it with a bunch of systems that I'm already using. Now the actions. Let's talk about this, because this one here is one of the meatier ones. Here we can create a report on the local groups of a machine, right? So what I've done is I said, report to me the NT account name of anything that is in the administrators group. But I don't really want to know about administrator and domain admins because they're already in there. And you can continue to add not equals to this to say, I have a custom group, this is workstation admins, and I have another one, and so on. So you can add further ones there. This one also contains the remove action, right? So not only will it report, but it will remove anything that is not administrator and domain admins. And the right action to use here, of course, is execute local account database, local groups, and delete objects. And you can find that right in here, in here, in here, and there. All right, so we have our actions and so on. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to bring this down because I don't want to run that action just yet. I just want to show you what the report looks like. Let's save this and let us run this. So I'll click start, and it's going to go through those machines and report that information for me. Right? Let's see. All right, so this just means that it's a subgroup of information. And here, so in the administrators group, we have a whole bunch of things in here. I didn't want to see administrator, and I didn't want to see domain admins, but I got a couple of other random ones that we put in here. So here's a list here. Of course, I can make this better by excluding this and so on, but it also has one user here who should not be here. This is what you're kind of eyeballing and saying, okay, he shouldn't really be in here. So now let's use the automation to actually do some removal. All right, so I'm going to go to properties here. I'm going to go to the actions, put this guy back, and let me just make sure. Yeah, okay. Okay. And save it. All right, so now I will go ahead and run this, and it will clean up that local admins group for me. It's going to remove everything that is not domain admins or and so on. Now, I've asked for the report first, so that's why it did show me this. Now let's see if that user is actually in there. All right, so he was in here, and local users and groups, administrators, members. Oh, he's still there. Is that the machine that was targeted? Let me make sure. Let's double check that. Sometimes with the automations, you got to, check it a couple times. Make sure you have your action the way that you want it to. Not equal to this and this. This looks good. Let's see. And the scope is demo workstation. So I wonder what happened there. I think I know what it is. Just going to add something here really quick. Of course, these are things that we'll be going over in other webinars as well. Okay, next. I forgot to configure a credential here. All right. So all of this. This should do it. Let me just double check here. Groups, administrators, members, it's still there. Let's rerun it. Run. All right, process that one. Okay. All righty, demo guides are failing me today. Probably did something wrong in there, but this is kind of part of process automation. It sometimes requires you to go and check and make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to. All right. Well, so at this point, you kind of get the point with the conditions and the actions so that you can make sure that you can do what you need to and make specific changes as you need to. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. I'm going to answer some questions now to make sure that we can get some questions answered. And of course, anybody who needs some help after the fact, we can always help you with our other resources. But let's go through it. Let's see. Will you show process automation in action? Can we see this somewhere? Sure. I'm interested in addressing the termination and old AD accounts. I can send you those specifically so you can see what they look like. They're actually in the automation center, so we can try it. Will this functionality work with systems that have not been joined to a domain? It does. You would basically use IP ranges for the most part to target those systems so that you can specifically get to them. The only difference is you have to make sure in your credential manager you contain a local admin account that works on your systems. So that's how you can take care of that. Can you remove a KB from any machine? Sure, that one is actually in the automation center as well. It's usually a matter of using the Windows Update feature in process automation. So you'll see that under report and execute, and there are some options there to uninstall updates and what data you might need to have. As a Goverlan subscriber, is there a way to demo this feature before upgrading to the Enterprise Edition? Absolutely. You can reach out to sales@goverlan.com or send us an email or give us a call, and we will be happy to help you with a demo of that. And just to go through, let's see. Goverlan Reach is just please show how to import and download process into the console one more time. Sure, I wouldn't mind doing that. Let me show you that really quick. So essentially, you should be able to grab it from the page here. For some reason, mine is set to IE, and IE is not just downloading it properly. So what I did is I just went to the browser, and you can find it right in our homepage, goverlan.com. And we go to resources and we go to automation center. And here you will see a list of automations. You can click on any one of them. Essentially, you're going to download the GSA file, and then that will import once you click it. If you don't see process automation and reporting in your console, you might want to give us a call to see if we can go ahead and give you a trial of that feature. Usually it's based on the license that you have. Let's see. Looks like a lot of you guys are answering questions here as well. This is great. I love to see this kind of stuff. I love to interact with you guys and see how everybody's doing. if you guys have any automations that you feel are helpful, feel free to reach out to us at some point in the future. We want to see if we can sort of make this a community-driven effort. But if you do have any, you can go ahead and request that, and we'll help you with that. Where do you define the values for the actions again? Yeah, let me just bring that one up one more time so we can take a look. So if you're going to make a change, let's say this one here, this object here, so we're going to go to execute, and we're going to go to local account database, local groups, and delete object. Now, just for everyone looking, if it says warning, you want to go ahead and read that warning because it says some things there. Essentially, this delete object will respect anything that is in the condition section. So here, what we've done is we've added a condition that is local account database, local groups, NT account name, right? So when you click that, you get to add here the condition, equals this, not equals that, and so on. All right, let's see. Excellent. Okay, so that is basically it for a basic primer into process automation. That is hopefully will get you started in your process automation journey. There's lots of cool things that we can do in there. It's really sort of up to you guys to build those Legos and put those things together and try them out. My basic advice is always try it first on one machine, see how well it works, and then of course do some other things with machines as well, or Active Directory accounts. And if you run into any issues, of course you can always get us support@goverlan.com, or catch us on chat in the phone, which we see most of you guys anyway, so we'll see you there. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone for coming, and we will see you again. Actually, I have a slide, one last slide here. In the end of February, we're going to do another one where we dive specifically into case scenarios, right? So let's say the deprovisioning user or local admin thing. I'm going to dive specifically into that and focus on those. So stay tuned for some more great webinars. So I want to wish everybody a happy weekend, and we'll be talking soon. Thank you very much.